Good evening, husband material men. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for the final edition of this free live class, How to Outgrow Porn. This is the most powerful way to change your brain, heal your heart, and save your relationship without fighting an exhausting battle against your sexual desires. So tonight, I'm going to teach the class one last time, and I'm going to announce the new program that I'm launching at the end. So if you stay until the end, you can hear that announcement and receive an invitation to join. Here's something that somebody wrote in the Husband Material Facebook group just the other day. He said, "My desires have changed to where sexual sin is no longer appealing. I didn't like it before either, but it was still somewhat pleasing in the moment. Now it seems to have lost much of its appeal even then. Also, my thought patterns have changed and responses have changed. For instance, instead of getting an erection and trying to ignore it, I embrace it and thank God for it. And it goes from being a fight to an enjoyable experience. It goes from tearing me down and making me feel like a failure to giving me confidence and drawing me closer to God. I'm actually thankful that I've struggled in this area of my life. God has used it to sanctify so many parts of me because our sexuality touches all parts of us. All parts of me have gotten healthier through dealing with this area of my life. Isn't it awesome how God can take our brokenness and use it for so much good in our lives?" Can I get an amen? When I saw that story in the Facebook group, I asked him for permission to share it because that's what this is about, guys. Learning to not just avoid, ignore, attack our sexuality, or just tolerate it, but to embrace it and to enjoy it as God intended. And some of you might be wondering, is that really possible? So that's what tonight is about. That's what Outgrow Porn Now. That's what How to Outgrow Porn is about. That's what I want to teach you tonight. That vision is possible, it's available, and that's why we're here. So thank you so much for joining me. I want to start off with a question, and I actually have a poll for this. So, true or false? Freedom from porn is a lifelong battle. Do you believe this? Freedom from porn is a lifelong battle. Looks like most people are saying true. Some people are saying false. Interesting. Just like last time. About 60% true, 40% false. What do I believe? I think for most people this is true because they don't know any better. If you believe you're going to struggle with sexual sin for the rest of your life, you probably will. Most people don't realize, though, that it doesn't have to be a battle. You can actually eliminate the battle altogether. That's what I've experienced. That's what I help my clients experience. What does that look like? Let me tell you a few stories before we get started. I want to introduce you to three men, Josiah, Charlie, and Thomas. These are three graduates of the Husband Material Coaching Program in 2019. Each of them has joined the White Bow Tie Club. You might be wondering, why does Husband Material have this white bow tie thing going on? It's because when you reach 1 year of freedom from porn, in my program, I send you a white bow tie to celebrate what God has done, what he is doing. And it's just a token to show that you have gone through this process. You've experienced a degree of healing. Most people struggling with this never will. So I want to tell you what that looked like for these three guys. Josiah first, he's on the left. When I first met Josiah, he had just proposed marriage to his fiance 2 weeks ago. And since then, they had also been having some conversations about porn because he revealed to her a recent relapse that he had had. And his fiance, Mackenzie, told him, if you don't get this sin out of your life, we will either have to delay the wedding or cancel it because I can't handle this. Josiah was devastated. He was angry. He was angry at himself. And as soon as you get engaged, you start planning a wedding, and he had a limited amount of time. His friend told him about me, about Husband Material. We started working together. And in 9 months later, he and Mackenzie got married with 9 months of freedom from porn. It's like he didn't know that at the beginning he would get immediate results and that it would last, but that's what happened. And that was May 2018? No, that was May 2019. So for the last year and a half, he has enjoyed total freedom from porn. He's been able to enjoy marriage, saved his marriage before it started, and it's no longer a battle. So that's Josiah. He was engaged to be married. What about these other guys? We got Charlie in the middle, and he's actually a single guy. Charlie came to me after having gone through 15 years of therapy. He had a really difficult childhood. We all do. For him, he was addicted to speed, weed. He was doing meth at one point. And he said porn is the last house on the block. It was the one addiction that he couldn't quit. And actually, he had a ritual where every night, Charlie used to, well, not every night. He had a ritual where he would stay up all night looking at porn. In the morning, he felt so bad about it that he would take out a hammer, literally, and smash his iPad. He smashed 7 iPads before he met me. This summer, I got to celebrate with Charlie as he reached 2 years of freedom from porn. Still a single guy. And he used to hate recovery, which is part of why he smashed the iPads, because it was so frustrating. When we started working together, he actually enjoyed it so much that he put in an average of 2 hours a day into our work together because he loved it, because it felt so completely different than the old school accountability addiction approach. And then we have Thomas on the right. Thomas was actually married when I met him, and he had a few months of distance from pornography. Here's the problem. He had been married for 8 months, and he wasn't able to be fully intimate with his wife in bed because he had the adult film studio of porn still occupying his attention. So a pornographic style of relating was infiltrating and invading his marriage. Not only that, he was having nightmares about things that happened to him when he was younger. Sexual nightmares. His past coming back to haunt him. And he had no security. He was afraid that a relapse could be around every corner. So he wasn't confident in his freedom. And since we got to work together, he has been able not only to completely enter into full sexual intimacy, pleasure and joy, weeping tears of joy with his wife when they were able to experience sex without porn getting in the way, without those pornographic thoughts and fantasies. And he even got to take a job as a youth pastor. So he saved his marriage and saved his ministry. And he no longer has to fight those fantasies anymore. That's part of why it's so great. That's part of why he is able to be so intimate with his wife, because they don't bother him anymore. He's learned to relate to himself in a new way. So these are 3 different stories. Whether you are single, dating, engaged, married, this can be you guys. Here's my mission today. I want to do 3 things. I want to replace shame with compassion. I want to replace confusion with clarity. And I want to replace despair with hope. If you've been struggling for a long time, no matter how long, my friend, there is hope. Healing is available. Freedom is possible. The gospel is true. And Jesus Christ is the way. So that's what we're about tonight. Who is this for? No matter what relationship stage you're in, this is for you. If you are tired of the old way, if you're frustrated and exhausted by traditional porn recovery, accountability software, and the old approach of checking in with each other and talking about whether or not we've sinned, if you're tired of that, this is for you. And if you're open to a different approach, I'm going to say some things tonight that will be different from what you've heard. They might be uncomfortable. They might be new. So are you open to a completely different approach to freedom from porn? If so, you're going to love this presentation. And before I get into the main content, I want to go over some of the basics. Maybe this is a repeat for you. Maybe you already know this stuff. We got to talk about why porn is a problem. First, it hijacks your brain. This is the cover of a book by my old professor, Dr. William Struthers. I was at Wheaton College and he's a professor there. And this book really helped me when I was a college student. It's called How Pornography Hijacks the Male Brain. We are wired for intimacy, and porn interrupts that. It affects every area of our lives. If you're having trouble performing at work, if you're having trouble focusing on what really matters, if you're having trouble with self-confidence, with just being able to do what you want to do in life, your brain is hijacked and porn is playing a role. It also hurts relationships. This is from my book, Redeem Sexuality, which came out at the end of 2017. Here it is. And this is a diagram showing how many relationships our sexuality is a part of. Number one is our relationship with God. It gets in the way of your faith. And also, if you have a significant other, it's getting in the way of her faith. So you see, two relationships with God are being affected. Number two is, of course, your relationship with others, especially a significant other. Porn is one of the primary contributors of divorce in today's world. And it hurts so much to have a partner who has deceived you with a porn addiction for years. Not only that, it also affects our relationships with our brothers too. Yes, women in general. Yes, your significant other, and with other guys. Number three, it affects your relationship with yourself. You've probably felt this, just the sense of self-hatred, the feelings of worthlessness, inadequacy. It can really damage who we feel like we are. And then four, our purpose. It's getting in the way of what God has called us to do, what he has created us to do. Porn is getting in the way of all of that. I think probably the most important reason, though, the most important and significant effect of porn use is that it fuels sex trafficking. The modern day slave trade is fueled by the consumption and purchase of porn. So here is a rather graphic image. It actually won an art competition. And this competition was put on by an organization called Exodus Cry with a social media campaign that you may have seen called Trafficking Hub. They're exposing the largest porn website in the world called Pornhub and renaming it Trafficking Hub because of the injustice on this website. Look at some of these comments from Pornhub on this girl's body. It says, "I hope she didn't get paid for this. Worthless little bee. Younger the better, who cares? I love how tiny she is and how it looks like it hurts her." So this is what goes on behind the scenes of porn. This is one of the biggest reasons why we need to get free from it. We need to stop this cycle. Because in the end, ultimately, porn exploits everyone on both sides of the screen. And I'm not just talking about the young girls who get trafficked into sexual slavery. I'm talking about us, guys. I'm talking about young boys. Because the reality is, it's not men who get hooked on porn. It's boys. If you haven't grasped the significance of that yet, I'm about to tell you. Porn is a predator. Porn is an abuser. And when we were very young, we were targeted by a $100 billion industry. Here's a little bit of research I did in the private Facebook group. I said, okay, guys, today's question is going deep. When were you first exposed to porn? If you're active in the chat, you can type in a number. When were you first exposed to porn? You can see the most common age was between ages 10 and 12. Then 13 to 15, 6 to 9. This statistic broke my heart. It's true though. And this is part of why it's so heartbreaking. When I get new clients, I ask them, so how much of your struggle with porn do you feel like is your fault? Not at all my fault, mostly not my fault, mostly my fault, or all my fault. And time again, I hear people say, I believe it's all my fault. Can you see the disparity between that idea and what I'm telling you right now about how the porn industry targets young boys when we don't know any better, when we're tender, when we're young? Porn doesn't come in as a problem. It comes in seductively, softly, speaking to the longings in our hearts, taking advantage of a boy who didn't know any better. Listen, was it your fault that your parents never talked about this? Was it your fault that you didn't get any support and guidance in your sexuality? Was it your fault that you maybe grew up at a time when internet porn exploded and became affordable, anonymous, accessible, available, and that it's so addictive? Was it your fault that when you did get into it, you didn't really have resources or ways forward when you wanted to be free? Was it your fault that you didn't have anybody that you felt like you were able to talk about this in a safe environment, or that you knew the next steps? Listen, if there's a reason to be angry about our porn issues, it should be anger at the injustice of this industry that is not only targeting young girls and enslaving them for life, it's targeting young boys and it's enslaving us for life too. So this is where we need to start. I've been talking about this lately on my podcasts and my videos. We need to start with the boy. For me, it's little Drew. For you, it would be little Marcus, little Chris, little Burton, little Zach, little Sammy. We need to get to know him. And we need to get to know, why did he start using porn in the first place? It became a pacifier. And I believe this. This is what I preach. Porn is a pacifier that both soothes our pain and gives us a little bit of relief, and it also reinforces the pain we're experiencing. It stunts our sexual development. It keeps us in a place of powerlessness and helplessness. And so this is so important, because no matter how old you are, 30 years old, 40 years old, 60 years old, 20 years old, sexually speaking, you might be 13 years old. You might be 6 years old. You might be 9 years old at the age when porn came into your life. Looking at some of these ages, guys are saying, I was 9, I was 8, I was 9. For me, I got stuck at 13. My sexual development was interrupted and inhibited by this evil, which also contained within it so much goodness, right? The point is very simple here. You need to know that porn is not primarily coming into our lives as a problem. It's coming in like a sexual abuser, as a solution, as a seductive, appealing solution to the other problems we're facing. Do you see this? Do you understand this? And when you do, you realize what doesn't work. I mean, you might already be aware of stuff that's not working, and maybe this will increase your awareness. So what doesn't work in helping you put down the pacifier? First of all, trying harder to be more spiritual, going to church more, reading your Bible more. I mean, these things are good and beautiful. I read my Bible almost every morning. It's part of my morning routine, and I go to church most weeks. The thing is, you can't slap a spiritual Band-Aid on emotional pain and expect this kid to feel better about himself. So if you have been going to church for years, reading your Bible for years, and you're realizing it's not actually helping me be free, I'm struggling just as much as I was a while ago, maybe even more, my friend, you were set up for this. Church and the Bible are really important and also insufficient if you want to help this kid grow up. For me, to help little Drew grow up, he needed more. So if that doesn't work, you might think, okay, well, what I really need is to get a better handle on this. So you try to build up some protective boundaries, get some accountability software, get some internet filters, find a buddy who will receive a report of your behavior. And maybe it'll help you with your surface level behavior for a little while, but the pacifier is still there. We end up trying to build fences around our sin, rather than getting to the core. And if you go through all the accountability and you get the purity groups, and at the end of the day, you're still stuck, maybe you might even make a bigger commitment and try to get some counseling or some therapy. And that can help. The problem is, most of the programs out there are still treating porn like the problem and trying to help you solve this problem in your life, not seeing your heart, which was good, which porn took advantage of. So in the end, Maybe you did everything your pastor told you. And here you are at this webinar. So I just want to validate, my friend, it's not your fault if you're still here. If the counseling and the therapy and all the spiritual solutions and the software and all those strategies didn't work for you, it's probably because they never got to the pacifier. The only way to avoid this exhausting battle is to find out, okay, who is this little one who's still with me all these years later, right? Maybe I'm 30 years old, but I'm 13 years old sexually. Maybe I'm 40 years old, but I'm 5 years old emotionally. Who is this boy? And what did the pacifier do for him? What did it offer to his heart? Because here's the problem. As long as you're treating porn like a problem, as long as you're fighting this battle, you can always lose. We'll get to that later. The best way to fight is not to fight at all. So, if you can help this kid change his brain and heal his heart, then we're on the right track. So, if I show you the path to complete freedom from porn, and not just freedom from your behavioral, but freedom from the battle itself, will you commit to the process? If so, type, I'm in. I'm talking to you if you haven't typed it in yet. There's still time. I'm in, I'm in, I'm in. Awesome. When you show up and you commit to this process, I will commit to guiding you through it, helping you sexually grow up into the man you're created to be. That is what I believe God has in store for us. Got most everybody here saying I'm in. We got a few people who still haven't typed it in yet. I'm waiting for you. Some of you might be thinking, Drew, I've struggled for so long. This is just the way I am. I want to tell you a quick story about Chuck. When I met Chuck, he had been using pornography for over 40 years. When he was in 8th grade, his father had an affair. When he was in high school, his music minister molested him. One of the first times he had sex, he was raped. And this is what he said. For 40 years, I could never get control of it. Meaning his unwanted sexual behavior. Where I felt stuck in the mud with a chain around my feet and I could only go so far. Coaching allowed me to take the chain off. This has transformed my heart. It's not too late, my friends. No matter how long you've had this, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, your brain can change. God made us this way with something called neuroplasticity. If porn has hijacked your brain, God can restore it. He's the master restoration artist. And one of the most amazing things about Chuck is that even though he was separated from his wife, this level of healing has brought him to a place where they're actually having conversations again. And I'm really excited to see what happens in that relationship. And she is beginning to understand his story as he is doing this deeper soul work. And he's also stepping into a new training to help other men get these same results. So I'm really thrilled about Chuck. Somebody else hasn't typed I'm in yet, and you're thinking, yeah, I've tried everything. Nothing has worked for me. I want to show you a text message I got from one of my clients recently named Matthew. He said, Drew, I was reflecting recently on all the counseling I've had. I mean, in my life, as well as even in the last 6 years, searching for some help in the battle against sexual addiction. I've honestly never made any headway in comparison to the last 6 or so weeks. There's been a lot of uncovering, which sucks, but I am at least glad I know. Thankful for you and your work, man. Just wrap your mind around that, okay? All the counseling he's done, 6 years of searching, has not yielded as much result as 6 weeks. 6 years to 6 weeks. 6 weeks in the right direction, helping you outgrow your pacifier rather than constantly fight the battle against your desires. It changes things. And yes, he said, there's been a lot of uncovering, which sucks. Yeah, guess what happens when there's a kid with a pacifier and you take out the pacifier? What's going to happen? What's going to happen if you take out his pacifier, if he's really attached to it? you're going to have a screaming child on your hands, because that pain will come to the forefront. And so there has been a lot of uncovering, which sucks. And also, it's an essential step to helping the boy within you grow up, to actually understand what was this pain? What is this pain within me? Which porn is both soothing and sucker punching at the same time. I mean, when you get this, when you begin to do the work and it clicks, you accelerate. 6 years didn't make as much real progress as 6 weeks. I'm telling you, you haven't tried everything. You've tried everything that most people are aware of. Somebody else is saying, Drew, my fantasies and fetishes are too messed up. I don't think I can really be free. Let me tell you about Ken. This is Ken, who went through a resource called the Unwanted Digital Workbook by Jay Stringer, which I contributed to. And we created this based on his amazing book, Unwanted: How Sexual Brokenness Reveals Our Way to Healing. This is what he said after going through our workbook. One of the most painful and vulnerable things I did under your guidance was to face my sexual fantasies, which for me meant going to the darkest levels of my porn viewing. I discovered that my holy longing was simply to feel accepted and connected. I also had a desire to be naked and found as many opportunities as possible, which turned out to be a holy longing to pull down my facade, my curtains, my layers and layers of constructed coverings, and to be honest and vulnerable. Wow. Do you see how good these desires are? To be accepted, connected, honest, vulnerable. That's how God made us to be. That's what this boy needs. And he has begun to understand what porn is offering to his heart, and then being able to seek that in a healthy way. And porn loses its power. Its seductive appeal is reduced. It's amazing. So look what he says. I've enjoyed 6 months of sobriety and sanity. I'm beginning to experience true sexuality and sensuality. I don't push it. I just allow it to settle upon me as a gift from God. It has been wonderful. You know what I hear in that? I hear freedom from the battle. It's not a battle. He's receiving rather than resisting the beauty of his body that God created, of these nerve endings where pleasure and pain mix together in what sexually arouses us. He's learned how to live as a sexually healthy man of God, even with some fantasies and fetishes that baffled his mind, just like mine. And I'll tell you more about that when I tell you my story. Hi, I'm Drew. You might know me, you might not. You might be thinking, who is this guy? Well, here's me and my wife, Rebecca, my daughter, Chloe, and I have a son who died last year, which is a very tender part of my story. And then I have another son on the way who is coming in October. And so we are a family of 5, even though 3 of us are currently running around the house. I live in Santa Barbara, California. This was a moment of victory this year with a lot of different things closed. I've noticed that, hey, the trails are still open. So I've taken up a new love of trail running. This is where I live. I love it. But most of the time you'll see me here in this office, Husband Material headquarters, a little wooden shed at the end of my driveway, which we've converted into an office. And this is where I make videos and podcasts every week, helping men outgrow porn. This is the pacifier I'm holding in my hand that I'm going to help you drop. So that's a little bit about me. And but it wasn't always this way. Here's me back in 2014. I was a kid growing up who loved Jesus and hated porn, but couldn't stop my sexual behavior, no matter how hard I tried. I got into college, I got into some groups, I read a bunch of books, and it helped. And after even achieving a year of freedom from sexually acting out, even then, I relapsed. Has this ever happened to you? Where you felt like you were gaining traction, where you felt like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe this time it's over and I'm done with porn. Maybe you've made promises to God and maybe it seemed like for a while you could keep them. And then all it takes is one moment, one slip, one bad night. And you feel like you're back at the beginning. Ooh, that's what happens when you're fighting the battle. All it takes is one defeat, and everything you've worked for is over. It's gone. As long as you're fighting the battle, you can always lose. And what happened to me was, after a year of freedom, when I was leading a ministry of 200 students at Wheaton College, all these small groups, all these younger students were looking up to me, and they were pointing to me as a success story, saying, hey, freedom is possible. And Drew is evidence of that. Like, look what can happen. I was even beginning to write my book, Redeem Sexuality, around that time. And it was in fall of 2014 that I had my most significant season of relapse. I was like, God, is this fake? Like, I thought you healed me. I thought I was free. I thought I had a calling to help other guys. And now I feel like I'm no better than the youngest freshman entering into a group who's watching porn every day. Because in our behavior, not much looks very different. So my house of cards fell down once again. Well, things started to change for me in relation to Rebecca. Met this girl. Really wanted to marry her. We started dating, and girls had rejected me all throughout growing up. This one accepted me. I loved it. She was actually 4.5 years older than me. And we got very close very quickly. There was just one problem. I still wasn't fully free from porn. I still remember sitting on that couch right after we had finished a pre-engagement counseling session, where this couple had told us, you need to really get to know each other before you get engaged. Like, find out all the reasons why the other person might not want to marry you. Find out what are their skeletons in the closet. What are their dark secrets? What might they be hiding that you need to know before you commit to this? And I still feel the tension in my stomach when I think about that. I remember sitting on that couch in her apartment, looking at the carpet. Breathing was shallow. I couldn't look her in the eyes. That was the hardest thing about it. I couldn't look her in the eyes. And some of you know I'm a slow talker, so I'm just sitting there looking at the ground. She's patiently waiting. And after what felt like forever, without looking up, I said, Rebecca, I'm not as free from porn as you think I am. And there are some of my sexual desires and fantasies that I haven't told you about. I looked up, I made eye contact, and I saw nothing but love and compassion. And in that moment, I knew I really, really, really want to marry her, and I want to honor her. Even though she is willing to accept me just as I am, I knew the destruction porn had brought in my life, and I didn't want to bring that into her life too. So she motivated me, and we did get engaged. Here's a picture of the moment up on those mountains in Santa Barbara again, where I asked her to marry me, and it was so exciting. And I knew deep in my bones that I must know without a doubt that I am 100% free from porn by the time I make these wedding commitments. When I take those wedding vows, I want to know that I can keep them. I need to have confidence that she can trust me, that she'll never have to worry about my sexual behavior. And so my journey began, a deeper journey, because while I had gained a lot of traction, it wasn't enough. Even after a year, I still relapsed. So I started reading. I started watching videos. I started attending trainings. I traveled across the country with sex therapists. I watched a video course. This was back in 2015 when the Conquer series was new. And I went through that. I went through as much content as I could. I actually did my graduate degree, largely writing papers about this topic. And my book, Redeem Sexuality, came out of that. That was my grad school project. I was learning as much as I could about this. I even quit my job. I quit my job so I could research this stuff and write the book while we were engaged to be married. And one day, in spring of 2015, I came across a YouTube video with Dr. Patrick Carnes. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He is the grandfather of sexual addiction treatment. This guy invented the term sex addiction. Like, he started using it back in the 80s when nobody else even had a category for this. And he did so much research. This guy was a genius. And in this interview that I watched, he was talking about why specific people are drawn to specific types of porn. I was like, wait, what? Like, I thought people just struggle with porn in general. What do you mean specific types of porn? Like you're able to trace the secret logic behind why some things are appealing and some things are not? Yeah, he called it the arousal template. Each of us has one where the specific fantasies that we have correspond to life experiences, especially when we were young, and that sometimes when we're young, our sexual development can get stunted and our attractions and desires can fixate. And that's what happened to me. And I realized he's talking about me. When I was 13 years old, that's what happened to me. And I developed what's called a sexual fetish. And it was specifically for girls with braces. Goes back to my middle school days. But I always thought it was random. I just thought I was a freak. I just thought it was weird. And I harbored a lot of self-hatred for that. Never told anyone. And for the next 10 years, pretty much stayed that way. And all the work that I'd gone through, never talked about that. Well, Patrick Carnes showed me that there was a story behind this sexual fetish. And after I began to examine the life experiences, I thought, oh my word, he's right. And this unlocked a new level of self-compassion for me. I no longer hated myself because of this. I learned how to love the 13-year-old boy stuck in a middle school that he hated, surrounded by girls with braces. I began to really do the deeper work that got me to a place where instead of constantly fighting those fantasies that were lurking in the shadows, even after a year of doing so well in my behavior, those fantasies were still just as powerful until I began to learn about my pacifier and why this one in particular appealed to me so much, right? I mean, we each have our own different flavor, our own different colors of what appeals to us. You might think you're attracted to porn in general. No, it's always very, very particular. And the power is in the particularity. We'll get to that. So here's what happened. I was able to marry Rebecca. There's her dad marrying us once again in Santa Barbara. Wow. I was able to marry her with over a year of freedom, but this time I could trust it. This time was different. And that was over 5 years ago. And ever since then, I've been completely free from all sexual acting out. And now I get to help other guys get those same results. And Rebecca could trust that her husband was husband material. That's where I get the name of my ministry, is because whether or not you get married, you still need the Christ-like character to be husband material, to be the kind of person who can be trusted, the kind of person who is not always on edge, where there could be a relapse around every corner. So this is what's happened in my life. I'm just still kind of shocked that I was able to get to this place, that God took me so far, and yet the work is not done. So this is what I get to do for a living now. I wrote this book. I have this weekly show called Husband Material, and a ministry of being able to coach individuals and coach groups. And I've been able to work with Jay Stringer, who took the foundation of Patrick Carnes' research, built on how Mark Lacer brought that information to the Christian community, and coupled it with Dan Allender, an amazing counselor out in Seattle. And Allender mentored Stringer, and I got early access to Stringer's book, Unwanted, and really liked it, started using it with my clients right away. And together we created this digital workbook, which has been a huge blessing. And it's been primarily what I've been using with clients until this year, now that I have this new curriculum, which I'll tell you more about later. But it has been so awesome to work with Jay and to be mentored by him to do this work. And that's why today I am revealing the only path to lasting freedom from porn, without fighting, an exhausting battle fueled by toxic shame. Thank you for sticking with me so far. Are you ready for the actual meat of what I want to tell you today? Here are the 3 secrets to freedom from porn that I promised I would share. Number 1, 5 reasons why purity culture does not work and makes you feel worse about yourself. Secret number 2, the secret trick to hack your sexual fantasies and strip porn of its seductive power. Remember, that's what happened for me when I watched that Carnes video. Secret number 3, 3 steps to build a porn-free world to set yourself up for lasting freedom. Without internet filters, accountability software, or downgrading to a flip phone. Beginning with secret number 1, 5 reasons why purity culture doesn't work and makes you feel worse about yourself. We've already talked about this a little bit. Well, let me give you a bit of a deeper perspective on it. Patrick Carnes, when he was doing his research, found some very specific patterns in the kinds of people who were coming to him for help. He found that they came from a type of family system, which he called rigid and disengaged. How do you know if you've had this kind of family background? In a rigid family, there are strict rules and inflexible beliefs. And these rules are often unspoken. There are some things we just don't talk about in this family. There are some things we just don't do. There are some beliefs that we just don't question. And in a rigid family, if you don't believe a certain way, or you don't behave a certain way, you will be punished. So there is a kind of rigidity. Rules come before relationships in a rigid family. Does that describe you? Did you grow up in a kind of household where rules came before relationships, at least sometimes, where you felt pressure to acquiesce to what your parents thought, what your parents wanted? Also, the second quality was disengaged. In other words, the things that you really cared about, you really loved, what lit you up, what you were really good at, you didn't really receive much attention or pursuit from your parents in that area. And especially in some critical areas, like, for example, if you grew up and you had some difficult emotions that you were feeling, what were you supposed to do with those? Were you able to process them? Did you feel safe with your parents to talk about them? Or was it something where maybe they tried to solve your emotions? Maybe they tried to get rid of your emotions. Maybe they tried to slap that spiritual Band-Aid on it. In the end, the result is that your heart is left unpursued. And especially when it came to sexuality, there was very little talk. There was very little conversation. There was very little engagement in that area. And here's what Carnes found. The families which were most likely to fit this description were evangelical Christian families. Strict rules, inflexible beliefs, and a lack of emotional support, a lack of sexual conversation. This is a perfect recipe for sexual addiction. Do you see this? Do you see how it makes sense that the rate at which Christians struggle with these issues is no different, if not greater than the rest of the world? Because they're at least willing to talk about it. They're at least willing to normalize it as a part of life, whereas we're stuck in shame and silence and secrecy and judgment in our church communities, in our families, in our Christian schools. I see some of you commenting saying, yes, disengaged describes me. I grew up in a rigid home. Somebody saying, my parents told me to stuff your emotions, son. Yeah, and it's often done in the name of Jesus. And there's a name for this kind of culture, which has emerged, and it's called purity culture. Purity culture sets you up for sexual addiction. I just want to say how this is so different from what most people come in to try to get help thinking, right? They think it's all my fault. They don't realize purity culture, this rigid, disengaged childhood, sets you up for sexual addiction. It actually prepares you for it. And here's what I mean by that. So here are the 5 failures of purity culture. In other words, what to avoid if you really want to be free. Because even though porn is a massive problem, purity culture is also a problem because it's given us so many false solutions and shallow attempts to fix the deeper issues. So here are the 5 failures of purity culture, which could also just be called a description of purity culture. Number 1, toxic shame. Look at this. This is a vow of purity, a covenant, and a purity ring. Saying, true love waits. I promise to God, my future mate, and myself to keep my mind and body morally clean and pure. Now, this might seem harmless on the surface. And I have to be clear that, having sex outside of marriage is not a good idea. And the founders of the purity movement in the late 80s, early 90s, had good reasons to want to educate the general public on the dangers of sex outside of marriage. AIDS was a big deal back then, and people were dying from having sex outside of marriage. So they were like, okay, this is a big problem. We need to address this. Problem was the way that they communicated this message was based on toxic shame and fear. Let me unpack this a little bit. So this vow of purity is actually quite toxic. And this was very common, right? Promises, purity rings, performance. Finish this sentence for me. I must be pure or else. Or else what? If I break my promise, then what will happen? Tell me. I must be pure or else. Then I will not be desired. I'll go to hell. I'll be kicked out of the family. I won't find a wife that is incredible or loves me. I must be pure or else God will be mad at me. Do you hear the lies of the enemy being whispered under the disguise of Christian morality and ethics? Underneath it, there's a toxic shame. I must be pure or else my parents won't accept me, or else I'll be in sin. And ultimately, these purity rings end up reinforcing the very shame that drives us towards porn. I must be pure or else I will be rejected. Somebody says, I still have my purity ring in a drawer, right? This message stuck with some of us, and it stuck because of fear and shame. I recently read an amazing book, which I have here with me, called How to Talk with Your Kids About Sex. And it's by Rodney and Tracy Wright. They'll be guests on the podcast pretty soon. I just want to share this one story from the end of the book, which gives you an alternative to this purity culture toxic shame. He gave his daughter a ring and he said, Whitney, this ring is a value ring. This is not your promise to us. This is our promise to you. I want you to know that your value in our eyes will never change, regardless of your behavior. Whether you make good decisions in life or you make pure decisions, your worth as our daughter will never change. We will always love you. Our heart will always be for you. If I, as an earthly parent, can love you this much, then how much more does God love us, being our perfectly heavenly Father? Come on, guys. That is the message that we needed to hear as young boys. That is what our purity rings should have told us. The message of the gospel. Right? That it's not what we do that determines who we are. It's who we are in Christ that determines what we do. Guys, that is the message of grace. That is the message of Jesus. I'm really torn up about this. You know what a biblical view of purity is? John 15:3. Jesus says, you are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. And so really, if we take purity according to biblical standards, it's a sense of honor. It's not toxic shame. It's a sense of living in alignment with what is already true about me. Amen? Okay, so toxic shame set us up to struggle. And purity culture starts with that, right? With making these promises. Well, if I'm going to make these promises, how am I going to keep them? The answer was sexual repression. This is a book, Every Young Man's Battle, which I received as a boy. My mom put it on my shelf and didn't even tell me she bought it for me or what it was for or why she bought it, right? That's disengagement, by the way. So she put this book in my room. It's on my shelf. Well, I read it. It's about strategies for victory in the real world of sexual temptation. It wasn't really full of strategies. It was mainly full of stories about guys who were talking about their struggles. And at the end, it does give one strategy, one piece of advice, which stuck with so many of us who were given this book. Jared is saying, I went through that book years ago. Honestly, it made things worse for me. Gary is saying, I'm burning my copy. Oh, that's awesome. All right. So at the end of the book, it tells you to bounce your eyes. In other words, when you see a sexually attractive person, just bounce right off of them. Boom. Because it's not the first look. It's the second look that gets you in trouble. And there's some truth to that. But here's the point. We were taught in the purity movement to take this approach, which is essentially when you have a sexual attraction, urge, ache, desire, any kind of temptation, attack it, avoid it, or ignore it. So which one was it for you? What did you learn to do? How did you learn to respond to your sexual desires, attractions when they came up? What did you feel like you were supposed to do? Attack them? Like slap a Bible verse on that thing? And yeah, God's word is the sword of the Spirit, and it can certainly help, but it helps us for the sake of our sexuality, not against our sexuality. Were you taught to avoid it? Run away, flee sexual immorality, which is true. I mean, that's good. It's just not sufficient. It's incomplete. Or maybe you were taught to ignore it. Some of you guys are saying, attack it, fight back, avoid, ignore, right? This is ultimately a fear-based response. Can you see that? It is a fear-based response in the sense that it's putting you into fight, flight, or freeze mode. That is what our emotional animal brains are supposed to do in the presence of danger. So we were taught to see our sexuality as dangerous, to see beauty as dangerous. We never learned how to handle beauty. We were taught to repress our sexuality. So here's why that's important. Because outside the church right now, the world promotes what's called released sexuality. At least I call it released sexuality. Anything goes, who cares, whatever, it's casual. Inside the church, we have repressed sexuality. Ignore it or avoid it. And if you can't, fight it with everything you have. Right? Repressed sexuality. What my book is about, what I believe in, is redeemed sexuality. God created sex and sexuality. He created us. And though we have been broken by what we have done and by what has been done to us, He is the Redeemer, He is the Restorer, and He is making all things new, including our sexuality, so that we can actually enjoy it as He intended. Yeah, so that is a very different message than what many of us received growing up. Shane Randall says, what is oppressed grows. It's true. It's true. This resistance actually increases the level of intensity of the desires we feel. Let's talk about what happens when you grow up with toxic shame and you have an attitude of sexual repression. It very naturally leads to a military mindset. Most men's recovery ministries promote this. You'll see it everywhere. Be a warrior, be a conqueror. I mean, look at this guy. This is a men's conference that I was recently invited to. He looks like he's from Sparta, or like the movie 300 or one of these movies which are all about, being big, strong, and bad and fighting a war. And I mean, there is an aspect of this that's important, right? Spiritual warfare is real. We need to be clear also that ultimately that is a battle that Jesus fights for us, and He's actually already won it. Our job is to come to Him for healing, to trust Him, and to allow Him to do the heavy lifting. My job is to stay close to Him. Jesus is the conqueror. He is the Joshua claiming this promised land, driving out his enemies. And we're not strong enough to face those enemies. They've already been defeated once and for all. The battle, in many ways, is over, and we have an opportunity to claim his victory. So the battle is not ours to fight, my friends. There is one, and spiritual warfare is real, and we're called to put on the armor of God. And also, if that becomes your dominant metaphor, you will begin to see your sexuality as the enemy, not as this good, beautiful part of who we are. And I'm about to talk about a more popular resource, which has actually been really helpful for me. I just feel uncomfortable about it because it has been tainted by this military mindset with residue from purity culture. And I'm talking about the Conquer series. This is a video series that came out a few years ago. And when I first watched it, it really helped me because Dr. Ted Roberts, who studied with Patrick Carnes, who founded the Pastoral Sex Addiction Professional Program, which I attended, which changed my life, he's an amazing trauma therapist. And he understands the wounds of the past. He understands childhood. He has an amazing grasp on neuroscience and the brain, and he's helped thousands of men get free. And also, his life experience as a fighter pilot, it comes through every teaching, every illustration, as a Vietnam War veteran. And you get the feeling when you're watching the Conquer series, the battle plan for purity, that ultimately what I need to do is toughen up, rather than what I would see as much more helpful is to become tender. That's what changed me. And so I have mixed feelings about the Conquer series because, it's valuable information in many ways. This military mindset, though, it can be a part of toxic shame and sexual repression. And if you take this military mindset, it will continue to frustrate you. And you're always fighting the battle. And this is what I mean why most of us believe that freedom from porn is a lifelong battle. It's because we have this military mindset. Let me show you a screenshot from the sequel to the Conquer series, which is coming out. It's called Warpath. Look at this. What do you see? Can you imagine being one of these guys sitting in that room? Like, they have 3 huge tanks pointing their guns at them. What does that communicate? When I see that, I don't see love and growth and healing. I have a fight, flight, or freeze response personally. I'm like, guys, this is like re-traumatizing. I would not want to be in that room. And I want you guys to know, like, some of this information is really valuable. And the Conquer series is not bad. It's just kind of missing the point with the presentation, with the overall messaging. Purity culture is coming through strongly. Look at this face. What does that face communicate to you? This is Doug Weiss. He's an expert. He's a renowned clinician. And he says a lot of great stuff. With this facial expression and with this presentation style, doesn't work for me. Some people are saying, I see rage and anger. It says, you better not mess up. And ultimately, here's what happens when we have this toxic shame, sexual repression, military mindset. It ends up feeling like the porn police. It actually blew my mind the other day when I realized most of our accountability groups and purity ministries are reenacting the rigid and disengaged family environment that we grew up in, right? You get into this group and you're checking up on how's your behavior. If you ever admit that you might believe something differently than somebody else in the group, say about the topic of masturbation or say about something which is another hot topic, right? Inflexible beliefs, strict rules, and a lack of emotional support, right? How much are we really talking about the heart? How much are we really going back to our childhood? How much are we really finding that boy within me who needs love? Pursuing his heart. Now, most of our groups and ministries out there are essentially taking this porn police, enforcing that military mindset with things like accountability software, right? Ultimately giving surveillance, keeping tabs. Sometimes I think of it as like a tattletale, right? Like I should be able to call my friend hopefully before acting out, but even if I call him after acting out, that's a step above having a machine do it for you. I believe some of these programs can be helpful and that the software is not necessarily bad. It's kind of like a crutch. I hope one day you will heal to the point where you don't need it anymore. And if you've been using it for years, maybe it's actually holding you back. Filters and blockers, right? Trying to create these digital prison cells to keep our desires contained, and other sin management strategies. So, guys, these kinds of things are what you get when you realize purity culture is seeping into our sexual recovery circles. There's one more failure, though, that I really need to talk about, which is false promises. So let's just say you bought into the toxic shame, the sexual repression, the military mindset, and you became part of the porn police and you succeeded. Let's say you were like me and you even got it to a year of freedom, you get married. Purity culture made a lot of false promises about what would happen at that point if you were able to succeed. Finish this sentence for me. When you get married, then what? What were you taught growing up in your church, at home? When you get married, you won't struggle anymore. When you get married, it goes away. Porn addiction vanishes. You will be fulfilled, satisfied. When you get married, your sexual struggles will go away. Marriage is the ultimate goal. You won't need porn to satisfy your sexual urges. And that's a huge one, right? Because you'll have a spouse, a sexual outlet. Ultimately, we end up treating our spouses like sexual vending machines if this happens, right? You think it'll take your struggle away, and when you find out, well, it didn't take it away, then you end up having a pornographic style of relating to your wife. This is just so frustrating about purity culture. What I heard when I was growing up is that sex will be better. It will be so much more satisfying. You'll be able to have it as much as you want. You'll get exactly what you have been dreaming of sexually if you wait for marriage, which is ultimately still self-centered and sinful. I don't know how we got this idea that you can't lust after your wife. If I'm relating to her as a sexual object to please myself and whatever I want, I'm basically treating her like porn. I'm basically using her as a replacement for pornography. So, far from taking away our struggles, marriage actually intensifies them because now another person is suffering from our sin. And actually, I think this whole little formula here, when you get married, is even flawed because not all of us will get married. And even if you are married, someday you might not be married. Maybe your spouse dies. Maybe you get a divorce. Maybe something happens. We will all be single at different times in our lives. And singleness is not a conveyor belt. It's actually a gift. It's good in and of itself. And our sexual desires are good even in singleness. So purity culture, it held up marriage like this dangling carrot. And I like to say, I felt like I had to hold my breath sexually until one day I get married and I can let it all out. That didn't happen. My wife and I didn't actually have full sexual intercourse for the first 7 months because porn had conditioned me, because masturbation was more comfortable and familiar to me. I was accustomed to it, even though I'd been free for a long time. And so we've been on a journey, and it's been healing. It's been redemptive. Marriage doesn't solve things. So purity culture gave us these false promises. And that makes me really angry. Ultimately, a purity culture presents the illusion of freedom, but not the real thing. Just like porn presents the illusion of intimacy, not the real thing. The illusion of pleasure, not the real thing. Purity culture is also fake, presents the illusion of freedom. And so many of us have bought into it, and we've been disappointed. So if you're feeling frustrated and exhausted, it makes a lot of sense. It's because purity culture has failed you. It's not because you have failed as much as it is because you were set up for this. And I'm not saying that purity culture caused your problem with porn. I'm saying that it's a massive contributor you may not be aware of. And that there are many contributions that go back to our earliest childhood experiences. And we made choices that contributed as well, that got us to where we are today. So if you're frustrated and exhausted, me too. There's a better way. I want to tell you what happened to Joshua. Joshua had been through the Conquer series actually when I met him, and he had been struggling with sexual addiction since he was 9, essentially, in his basement of his house. And one day he looked at his accountability partner. He thought he was free from porn, and then it came back with a vengeance, and they both looked at each other and said, "What now?" He started working with me, and this is what he said by the end of it, when he learned to embrace and express his sexual desires in a healthy way. He said there was intense freedom from the desire to look at pornography, intense freedom from the desire to be ruled by a sexuality I didn't understand. It's a little bit surreal because I'm a completely different person. I don't have to fight this constant raging battle within myself over trying to stop look at pornography, stop masturbating. Isn't that awesome? He's saying I don't have to fight. He's saying there's freedom from the desire. Doesn't that sound too good to be true? Purity culture will tell you those desires are sinful. What we discover is that even though our desires have been corrupted, they're fundamentally good, and nothing can erase the image of God, which is so deeply imprinted upon us. And Joshua was able to get to a place where he doesn't have to fight this battle anymore. He was single when I met him. Since then, he's been able to marry a wonderful woman of God with confidence. And by the way, that's Josiah right there next to him. Joshua is the one who told Josiah about me. Marcus is saying, can you imagine the rest we'd get if we got to a point where we didn't have to fight 23/7? Yes and amen. Feels good. So here's what I want to ask you. I want to ask for your commitment. Are you ready to escape purity culture so you can finally escape porn? If you are committed to this, say yes. And if you make this commitment, then tonight is a success. It is a success no matter what else happens, because we need to get this message out there. We need to correct some of the toxic shame and repression and policing and false promises. It's out there. I believe if you really want to escape porn, we also need to escape purity culture. They actually have a lot more in common than you'd think. They both have a very low view of sex. In porn, it's a low view of sex is casual, sex is whatever, doesn't matter. In purity culture, sex is dirty, sex is gross, sex is nasty. We don't talk about it, we don't think about it. So let's get rid of both. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, Drew, what's the alternative? Like if purity culture doesn't work, then how can I be free? Like what is the right path? Well, I will tell you what has worked for me and countless others. It's the secret trick to hack your sexual fantasies and strip porn of its seductive power. This is actually a skill which I have learned from my mentor and the author, Jay Stringer. He has pioneered an approach which looks at our sexuality and our fantasies and all the specifics of what arouses us and examines it through the lens of your life story and asking, what are the holy longings below those desires, urges, attractions, images, videos? And when you do this, when you kind of peek behind the curtain, it's like entering the Matrix, and you can hack your sexual fantasies to find out what it is that they're offering to your heart. So I learned how to do this from Jay, in particular by going through his Unwanted Guide training. And I highly recommend it. So I didn't come up with this idea of hacking sexual fantasies. I am learning how to do it. I'm a student just like you. And I want to share with you what I've learned. Purity culture says, fight your sexuality, which is kind of like trying to put a cork on a volcano. It doesn't work. Husband material says, face your sexuality. Stop attacking it, avoiding it, ignoring it. Let's face them. Marcus says, starting to hack into my sexual fantasies has been so beneficial. Awesome. I'm going to give you a taste of what it's like. Here we go. How to hack your sexual fantasies. How to deciphering the message they're trying to tell you. Decoding the language of them, the secret logic. That's what this is about. What's the first step? Face your fantasies. Here's Nico. Nico is not a real person. He's a combination of a number of clients that I've had because I wanted to honor them, and I felt like sharing their specific sexual fantasies would fall short of that. So I took some themes that I've heard many times and created a story out of it. Here's Nico. What are his sexual fantasies? In the porn that he prefers, strong men are undressing each other. Interesting. Let's get curious about that. I wonder what's behind that. So it starts with that kind of honesty. This is what we don't talk about in our accountability groups and our recovery groups. We don't talk about the specifics, like what did you type into the porn search bar? Like what was the image or video that actually compelled you or appealed to you, right? There are countless varieties, and they're all significant. So the first step is just being honest. Like, what is your sexual fantasy? Steve says, better to hack your fantasies than having your marriage hacked by porn. Amen. The second step is to trace your triggers. So what do I mean by a trigger? I mean something that drives you to porn, whether that is an experience of pain that you're running from or an experience of pleasure that you're running toward. What is it that's triggering you, that's setting off a chain reaction? Let's look at this in a very simple way. Ask the magic questions. These are some very simple questions that when you ask yourself, you will begin to understand why I have this fantasy. Like, where is it coming from? Okay. What, how, and when? What, how, and when? If you're taking notes, take notes on this part. What exactly is most triggering for you? For Nico, it's the moment in the video when the men are undressing each other. Often he doesn't even get past that. It's that moment of exposure, of connection, of vulnerability that arouses him the most. So what exactly is most triggering for you? And this can also be negative, right? If your boss is mad at you, if you're feeling disconnected from your wife, if you're all alone in your apartment late at night and it's triggering you to use porn, even if it's negative. Okay, what part of it is most triggering? And whatever it is, pleasurable or painful, how does it make you feel? This is the most important because we can have an equal fantasy, like the exact same fantasy, but it makes us feel completely differently depending on the story behind it. So how does your specific fantasy make you feel? We could have very different fantasies, but they make us feel the similar way. And so that's significant. What is most triggering for you? How does it make you feel? Here's the most important question. This is the magic $1 million question that unlocks so much. When have you felt this way before in the past? Further back you can trace it, the better. If you are feeling angry, when have you felt this way before? If you're feeling alone, ashamed, abandoned, when have you felt this way before? If it's a sexual trigger of pleasure or something you really feel drawn to, you're like, oh, I need this. Well, when have you felt the exact opposite? So let's say it makes you feel secure. When have you felt insecure? Let's say it makes you feel powerful. When have you felt powerless? Let's say this type of porn makes you feel included. When have you felt excluded? Do you see the way this works? All the stories will begin to surface. And soon you'll have a little boy on your hands in front of you. And it's not the mature adult version of yourself that is attracted to these things. It's a younger place in your heart. When you ask these questions, you'll begin to discover exactly who he is and what he wants. Let's talk about Nico. So for his fantasy, when the men are undressing each other, for him it feels intimate. It feels close. And it feels safe at the same time. That's really significant. You don't have to tell me what your sexual fantasies are. You don't have to tell me what the type of porn it is that appeals to you. in the comments, let me know, how do these things make you feel? Your specific variety that is most arousing or appealing. How does it make you feel? Wanted, connected. For me, my fantasies made me feel accepted, noticed, pursued, cared about. Do you see the beauty of your heart? Do you see the goodness of your sexuality? Do you see what a fantastic and magnificent job God did with creating us with these desires? We can bless them. So then you can begin to ask the question, when have you felt the opposite? Let's look at Nico. When has he felt distant instead of intimate? When has he felt unsafe instead of safe? When we ask this question, it takes us back to his father. He always felt a lack of intimacy and closeness with his dad. And as you might imagine, his dad wasn't very available. And when he was, he didn't reveal a lot. So he had this feeling of never quite feeling close enough to dad. On the other hand, mom felt too close. And in his words, she was overbearing, smothering, could be intrusive and invasive. The way that she kissed his face every time he came home from school. Unsafe. Always too close to mom, never close enough to dad. This is something I can resonate with my specific story. Even though my sexual fantasies are different, I can claim that exact reality emotionally for myself. I see somebody else saying, I can relate to this story. Well, it doesn't stop there. He wasn't just distant from dad and enmeshed with mom. He was abused and hurt by different girls, by a cousin when he was 12, by his first girlfriend. Such a painful breakup. So let's look at this a little bit more closely. What might he conclude as a result of these experiences? Men don't want me. Women will violate me. And if I get close, I will get hurt. Do you see the divide here? He can either be close or he can be safe. He can't have both. Well, here comes porn. Let's see how porn provides a custom solution for these problems. And this specific type of porn. Women are far away. In fact, they're nowhere to be seen. It features men only. Men are close. Women are far away. It feels safe. It feels intimate. You're beginning to see what porn is offering to the heart of Nico and how this will communicate truths like, hey, in this story, men want to be with me. Women can't hurt me. I can be close and I can be real and I can be safe at the same time. This is an example of what it might symbolize. And you see how that's the exact opposite of his life when he was young. So what do we do with this? Now that he has this information, what difference does it make? This is where you begin to take action. Once you can trace your triggers back in time, once you go back, you can learn how to move forward and reverse the curse. What do I mean by that? Well, think about it. In the porn fantasy, he has intimacy with men, safety from women, strength and vulnerability, right? The opposite, the reversal of what was so broken in his life. Of course, it is a reversal, but it's also a curse. Because in the porn fantasy, it's just the illusion. What if you could get those things in real life and reverse the curse in a healthy way, in a holy way, in a redemptive way? Here's what ultimately changes us. It's not telling ourselves the truth over and over again until we believe it. It's having a corrective experience that disproves those lies from the enemy so that they lose all their power. Let me show you a little bit of what this looks like. So how's he going to get intimacy with men, if not in porn? Maybe it'll be with guys like Josiah and Joshua, where there's also safety from women and guys are getting vulnerable with each other and strengthening one another. He might not even know the reason why this kind of experience is so powerful for him, but it is because it's reversing the curse. Whew. How do you do that? How do you reverse the curse? Well, it involves a couple of things: rest and risk. What do I mean by that? All right, so he's restless until he finds what his soul has been longing for. You will be restless until you get the real thing, right? For him, it's that intimacy, safety, strength, and vulnerability. In order to get a real version of that, in order to have the corrective experience, it also requires a risk. It's going to require opening up to these guys, and you might get hurt again. It's going to require going back into some of those places, opening up those wounds that, hey, you might get hurt again, or you could get healed. That's where the risk comes in. And they feed into each other. And having that safe foundation of rest, for example, with that group of guys, can become a foundation for taking bigger risks. And you know what happened for Nico? He realized that for him, he needed to get back into the dating world. Porn was always a place where he preferred men, but in real life, remember, he was dating girls until he concluded that I'm not safe there. So there was a period of like 12 or 15 years where he didn't date anybody. And having this deep fellowship with male bonding became a foundation. Trusting God became a foundation for him to put himself out there again by going on a date with a girl that he was interested in. Taking a risk, guys. If he's getting hurt, then he can have a corrective experience of coming back to group and realizing, hey, it's not the end of the world. Still standing. If, on the other hand, it goes well, then once again, it's disproving the lie that women will always hurt me. So what do you get when you begin to find real rest and choose redemptive risk? The result is redemption. The result is that the very places in which we have experienced the most shame and honor and condemnation become the places where God brings the most healing, freedom, and praise. It's incredible. And to get your roadmap to redemption, you got to see where you're coming from. That will help to show you where you need to go with God's help. Here's my commitment that I'm asking for. Will you target one of your sexual fantasies so you can face it, trace it, and reverse the curse? You've already begun to do it tonight. Face this fantasy, trace it to the roots, and find out what's that corrective experience that's going to disprove the lies of porn and replace them with a deeper healing. Can you commit to this? If so, type yes. And if you do this work, you will see a kind of result that purity culture can never give you. People are typing yes. Awesome. Yes, already working on it. Great. Already working on reversing a few. Fantastic. It's amazing. I mean, it takes time, right? To face what these fantasies are, to really write the stories about them, and then to rewrite those stories, to co-author them with God's help, as Dan Allender says. All right. So let's say you've begun to do this sexual fantasy hacking work and you've gained a lot of knowledge. And maybe you've begun to find rest for your soul and take the risk of growing up in these different ways, facing those fears, disproving those lies. All right, so, how do you get to a point where your freedom gets solidified into a foundation that lasts for the rest of your life? Here's secret number 3. 3 steps to build a porn-free world that sets you up for lasting freedom without internet filters, accountability software, or downgrading to a flip phone, right? If you simply removed access to porn completely, then I suppose you could get some results, but it wouldn't nearly be as powerful or as effective as this deeper work we're talking about. And I think part of that is not just the inside out work, right? When you hack your sexual fantasies, you're starting on the inside and you'll see changes on the outside. Healing also comes from the outside in. So what is the porn-free world you need to build for yourself that is going to set you up for lasting freedom? I have a sandcastle on the screen here because some of you have experienced some success, but you're worried that your freedom won't last. And that's what I want to talk about here. What leads to long-term freedom? Let me tell you about Charlie. So I talked about him a little bit earlier. How did he get 2 years of freedom plus from day one? This is what he said. I'm 2 years porn free. I'm a lot more clear-headed. I'm able to take care of myself better emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world because it's maybe a different, God-fearing, more understanding, and vulnerable person. I feel free. I don't feel isolated. I don't feel insignificant like this addiction can make you feel. Most importantly, I feel seen. Do you see the redemptive reversal in these words? He's saying I'm able to take care of myself in those places where he was abandoned and wasn't taken care of. He said, I'm a more vulnerable person where in the past he had to hide. I don't feel isolated, right? Now he's connected. I don't feel insignificant anymore. Most importantly, I feel seen. That's most important for him. Okay, well, what allowed him to feel seen? What did that look like? How did he build a world in which he reversed the curse and felt seen? Right? Because that was huge for him. For his story, that's huge. Think back to if you were ever in Spanish class, taking a foreign language of some kind. Maybe you got some really good teaching in the class, but did it stick? Did it really make a difference in your life? You show up once a week to class. Maybe you do your homework in between. Maybe you go to class for even a few years. But does it really make a difference? Usually this is what most of our recovery programs do. In most of our recovery programs, you show up once a week to the counselor, to the group, and then you go back to your life and nothing changes. This is the classroom approach to recovery. What I did with Charlie was I took him on a different journey. The immersion approach. Just imagine, right? Just imagine if instead of going to foreign language class every week, you study abroad. You go to Spain. You enter a culture. Your language learning would be so accelerated and it would stick. It would last because you have a new environment. You have a new lifestyle. You have new relationships and everything around you is supporting this process that you're going through, right? You're with different people. You're doing different activities. It's part of your life now. Somebody's saying healing is a lifestyle. Absolutely. So what we did with Charlie was we created a porn-free world together. What are the components of that world? What does the immersion approach look like? Let me tell you. 3 steps to build your porn-free world. Number 1 is environment. To actually change your environment. I like to say we set up residential treatment from your own home. If you got a boy with a pacifier and he's just so attached to it, what if we took him outside? What if we took him on an adventure? What if we changed his environment? Maybe he would begin to take it out a little bit more and put it down. Maybe he wouldn't need it anymore. So let me tell you what this looked like for Charlie. All right, this is what I wanted to tell you. Charlie works at a hotel. He calls it a fancy sex place. It's very triggering. Sometimes he'll walk into a hotel room and people had just been having sex. Sometimes they've had porn on the TV screen. So how do we transform his environment? He had this amazing creative idea to get very open and honest with some of his fellow employees. So in this place, which is so triggering for him, which is a fancy sex place at this hotel, he found allies. He found that brotherhood where he can feel seen while he's at work. His environment transformed. Since COVID, he's been home a lot more, and a big part of his environment is being able to exercise and work out. So he took one of his bedrooms and he made it into a gym. And now his home environment is also being transformed. When you change your environment, you set yourself up for so much more lasting. I'll just say it's faster. Freedom comes faster. So Charlie was able to create space for himself to do 2 hours per day on both the inner healing and the outer healing necessary to reverse the curse. And that's part of why he was able to get free from day one. If you want to change your habits, first change your habitat. Transform your environment. Number 2 is lifestyle. And somebody mentioned this already. If you got the boy with a pacifier, what if you give him something better? What if you give him something different? I've got some Legos here, and I've got a slide. The Legos represent rest, finding that place where you feel at home, where you feel at peace, where you feel like, hey, this is my world. This is me doing what I was created to do. Play. And the slide is risk, right? Facing those fears, choosing courage. I want to tell you about Joshua because he was able to do this in a way that was really effective. So for him, he was 9 years old in a basement when porn really took a hold of his life. And he would spend hours down there, disengaged, emotionally abandoned, just playing with Legos, creating his own world. So here's what he does now. Part of his self-care, part of his porn-free lifestyle is playing Legos. And as he does so, he's spending quality time with his younger self, with little Joshua, who doesn't need a pacifier when his heart is being pursued, when the relationship is at the forefront, right? So he's able to transform his self-care. And this is something you can do. If you've been thinking, self-care, I've heard that all before. What if you approached it as spending quality time with the little guy, the 13-year-old, the 5-year-old, asking him, what does he want? What does he need? Where is he passionate? What does he love? For Joshua, man, it was Legos. And so part of his lifestyle involves play. It involves coming back to that place where he can find rest. One of the things for Charlie in his lifestyle was reading. He grew up dyslexic, could never read. Since we've been working together, he has been such a ravenous reader. He's read like 12 books. It's been incredible. Over these 2 years, he has learned so much, and reading is part of his lifestyle that is so unique to his story. Reversing the curse, right? Creating this porn-free world. It's all part of it. So lifestyle. Another one is relationships. With porn as a pacifier, we don't learn how to relate to other boys, other girls. And I want to tell you a story about what this looked like for one of my clients named Drew. He came to me after a really tough breakup. And he had already had some distance from pornography, but the breakup kicked him right back to where he used to be. So in this post-breakup devastation, he constantly felt torn about going back to her, or about the longing for her, but also the emotional abuse that he was receiving from her. I mean, it was not a healthy relationship. So part of his porn-free world meant getting together with his brothers in Christ and being able to fully separate from her. For some of you guys, if you're living with your mom, maybe part of your porn-free world means moving out. If you felt like Nico and like she's smothering, she's oppressive. Maybe part of your porn-free world in relationships is, breaking something off that really needs to be out of your life. Or maybe it means pursuing something. Like for Nico, it was he needed to start dating again. Maybe for some of you, you need to pursue someone. Maybe you need to separate from someone. In any case, your porn-free world involves relationships. Changing your environment, your lifestyle, and your relationships. This is what leads to long-term freedom. So, I have one more commitment I'm asking you to make. Will you commit to doing whatever it takes in your environment, in your lifestyle, and your relationships to become a sexually healthy man of God? I know this is a big ask. Some of you guys are saying yes. Do you realize what you're committing to? I asked if you're committing to do whatever it takes. That's huge. That is a very big question, and some of you are answering yes. I'm really encouraged to see that. Awesome. You're willing to do whatever it takes. Changing your environment is tough. Changing your lifestyle is tough. It gets easier once you start with your habitat, then you change your habits. Changing your relationships, it's not easy. You guys are committing to do whatever it takes. And I'm really honored by that. So I've told you a lot of stories tonight. I have so much affection for each of these men. even Nico, even though he's not real. And there are so many more. Will you be one of them? Let's talk about what really works with porn as your pacifier. How do you outgrow it? Change your brain. We've been brainwashed by purity culture. There's a secret trick, hacking your sexual fantasies, that can give you so much more self-awareness. And with that, you have a new opportunity for self-compassion. When you change your brain and you heal your heart, you reverse the curse, and you finally get that direction from God for what needs to change in your environment, your lifestyle, your relationships, the accountability software will seem slightly irrelevant because your life is so much bigger, because you're growing out of these old containers. And once you have that direction, you can put down your pacifier and move on with your life. Thank you so much for being a part of this class today. Were you happy you're here? Did you get something out of it? That's what it looks like to outgrow porn, guys. After this, do you feel more confident in being able to live without porn? My mission today has been to replace shame with compassion, to replace confusion with clarity, and to replace despair with hope. To replace shame of purity culture with compassion, right? The gospel, God's love. If you have a purity ring, man, you got to get a value ring, a gospel ring. That's why I end every one of my presentations with, you are God's beloved son, and you he is well pleased. I also have wanted to replace confusion with clarity. If you have been confused about your sexual fantasies and the specific type of porn that appeals to you, maybe you have some clarity tonight. At the very least, I hope you have some curiosity about what it's doing for you. And replacing despair with hope. You have seen so many stories of men who have been able to get free from the battle. Why not you? So, if that mission has been accomplished, then I have done my job tonight. Then God has showed up, because he is the only one who can bring real healing and transformation. And at the same time, now that you have this massive advantage of knowing all these things, I want to know if you would like to spend more time together with me diving into the life of freedom you were created for. If so, then stick around, because I want to tell you about something new. Before this class, I had two choices. I could share all this information with you, help you start your journey to freedom, and then leave you on your own. Or I could share all this information with you, help you start your journey to freedom, and then take responsibility. And I decided to choose option 2. I created a new program. It's called Husband Material Academy, and it is launching on Monday. So would it be okay if I stuck around for a little while and told you guys more about Husband Material Academy HMA? If so, say yes, and I'll keep going. If not, I understand it's late. You can have a great night. If you guys are saying yes, sure, I'd like to know more. Awesome. Well, then let me tell you about it. HMA is a Christ-centered coaching program for men to change your brain, heal your heart, and save your relationships by achieving total freedom from porn while making the journey more fun and enjoyable than you thought possible. A lot more fun than the porn police. Here's the first part, the HMA Video Training Center. It is a 12-week video course with 36 videos with me like this, and with assignments, action steps to help you actually implement what we're talking about. The whole point of it is to reveal and heal the boy within you, based on curiosity, compassion, and courage, not purity culture. This is about developing Christ-like character, not about trying to be loved. Guys, we're already loved. Now we are learning to live in alignment with that love. So these videos, they're the core content of what you get with Husband Material Academy. And I want to tell you a little bit about this guy, Eric, who went through this content with me. He said, Drew addressed the whole man, not just sexuality, a departure from what I would call the toxic purity culture which overemphasizes behavior. We investigated why I tended to be a hard ass toward myself. Kindness was often in short supply. And here's what happened. He said, I can now say that over the last year, I've not intentionally sought out porn once. I'm living with a renewed sense of clarity and integrity. Eric had been in men's ministry for over 20 years. He was a leader in that crowd, but he was still struggling with porn and masturbation. And now, not only has he had over a year of freedom, he's pursuing his doctorate in clinical psychology, and he's training with Jay Stringer. And I'm so excited for what God is doing in and through him. So after completing these 12 weeks, you'll be able to look porn in the face without feeling threatened or thrilled because your brain, your heart, and your relationships have been transformed. So this is the first part of what you get. It's the training center. The second part of what you get is live coaching sessions. And this is the most exciting part, where we will do group coaching sessions like you see up here, which are pretty fun, just like a big Zoom call. And then also we're going to do something which has never been done before, live individual coaching sessions where all HMA students are invited to attend these live individual sessions, but it's just me or a guest coach if I can't be there, and another guy doing a live coaching call. You can only see our two videos in front of everybody else who is a student. Now you actually unlock access to these live coaching calls as you complete the 12-week training. So after week 2, you'll get access to a coaching call called Trigger Tuesdays, right, where we go into your triggers, we go into your story. There will also be a more advanced coaching session called Fantasy Fridays, which is a more experiential healing process. And Fantasy Fridays you can unlock after week 8 of the 12 weeks. But everybody from the beginning can come to the weekly group session, which will be Q&A Wednesdays. So all of the times for this will be shared later. Q&A Wednesdays are 3 p.m. Pacific time. Trigger Tuesdays are the exact same time as this webinar, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. And then Fantasy Fridays haven't been decided yet. I'm going to decide it with the 60 plus men who have already joined Husband Material Academy. So here's what you get with this. You get a front row seat to life change. Like, you get to watch other guys connect the dots and experience healing. And when you listen to their stories, your story will come more into focus and you will begin to be able to work through it yourself. You will finally see connections that you never saw before. When you hear somebody else talk about his dad, his mom, his childhood, it'll be like, oh, wow. When you see him choose compassion, choose courage, you'll get a sense for what it looks like. And you'll have the opportunity to receive individual coaching sessions with me for free when you join. If you go through all the steps, you watch the videos, you attend the calls, you apply, and if it's your turn, then you'll get to do one of these things. And this is kind of an experiment. I'm really excited to see how it turns out. There's no commitment, of course. You can come to as many or as little of these calls as you'd like. There will be up to 3 sessions per week, depending on how far you've gotten the video course. Right? By week 8, you'll have access to all 3. When you complete the entire course, you'll get some other bonuses, but we're not going to talk about those yet. Here's something that a guy in my group said. His name is Matthew. After one of our group sessions where he shared his story with the group, this is what he said. I didn't know healing was going to take place in a matter of 30 minutes. I didn't know that I needed you men to speak into my life in the way that all of you did. This group is so connected in a special way. It blows my mind to see all of us together and how God uniquely fitted us together. I loved hearing from blank and blank powerful stories, and I found myself identifying with so much. It was crazy. I wish today was longer. So much healing took place. I need to remind myself that I am worth fathering, that even men who are not my father are willing to speak that into my life. I can't be the same person after today, nor do I want to. Wow, I can breathe for the first time in a long time. This guy got it. The transformation was incredible in our group. And when I saw this, I asked him if I could share it with you, and he agreed. So this is what's possible when we break down the barriers of shame and silence and secrecy and begin to get curious and compassionate and courageous. It's amazing. In each call you attend, you will experience new clarity, compassion, and courage at levels you didn't even know existed. By the end, you'll be a different man, able to enjoy life as a sexually healthy adult. And that gets me fired up. So you get the training center with the videos, you get the live coaching sessions every week, and you get the private community. This is an interactive student center where we have a bunch of guys already introducing themselves, making videos, saying hello. This is your committed band of brothers. This is a different level of confidentiality and community than what we have in the Facebook group. And it's a place where we will be discussing these coaching calls. Like you'll be on an individual coaching call, watching some guy share a story, and you're going to want to talk about it. Well, this student center is the place for that. It's a place where you can find allies. It's a place where you can form your own groups with other students if you choose. And by the way, it's on a trigger-free mobile app. This is completely separate from social media. This is not a Facebook group. This is on an app where all the videos are, where you'll get access to all the coaching calls, and you'll get the private community all in one. So for some of you guys who are off of Facebook, off of Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff, no problem. You download the app and you get access. And it's fun. It's just fun. I love these guys. I love getting to hang out with you all. And that's what we'll be doing on Q&A Wednesdays. Connecting, talking about life, answering questions, looking at the places where you get stuck and moving into greater momentum from there, right? It's not just about what we're avoiding. It's about what we're pursuing together. It's about who we're becoming together in an HMA. I'm really excited for building a program that's going to serve hundreds and thousands of men. When you have a committed group of brothers in Christ you can count on, who are listening, loving, learning, and supporting each other consistently, not doing the old accountability thing, you'll find the friendships you need to heal and grow far beyond porn for years to come. Here's what you get: the videos, the coaching sessions, the community. This is what it looks like. This is what HMA feels like, right? You have it all online. And this is part of what I love about it. We're taking your digital devices that porn has occupied and transforming them and setting them apart for healing. Isn't that a redemptive reversal? So that your phone and that your computer become a place where you are actually growing and healing instead of drifting and getting distracted. How much is your sexual freedom worth to you? Earlier, you committed to do whatever it takes. For many of you, this is the one thing holding you back from confidence that you need to move forward as a man of God. It's hurting your brain, your heart, your relationships. Imagine yourself healed. What would you give for that? I once had a client who said if he got divorced because of his unwanted sexual behavior, it would be $1 million, which makes sense. And it makes a lot of sense why some people try to get residential treatment, right? They know I need to change my environment, my lifestyle, my relationships. So you go to a ranch in Montana or Arkansas or Georgia, and some of these programs are awesome and they cost like $50,000, which is why not a lot of people do them. And in the end, even if you get residential treatment and you pay the big bucks to work with the best, you go home, and if your life is the same, oftentimes you'll go back to the way you were before. Even if you get insurance for one of those programs, it could be $20,000. If you want to work with a psychotherapist or somebody who really understands these things for a year, if you wanted to work with me for a year, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And if you go to one of those weekend retreat intensives where they say, come, we're going to teach you how to be free from porn in one weekend, and in the end, it's based on purity culture and it leaves you feeling worse about yourself, the options have not been great. So you'd think that 1 year of access to a program of this caliber, like Husband Material Academy, will cost at least $5,000. Well, actually, the final price for 1 year is going to be $997. But right now, because it's a brand new program, because it's in beta, because we're launching it literally on Monday, I'm offering a massive discount. It's $197 a year or $19 per month. If you sign up at joinhma.com before Monday. You claim your discounted price now. Later, it's going to jump to $97 a month, which is still way cheaper. If you want to get an individual coaching session with me right now, first of all, it's full and there's a wait list of over 40 people, which is why I'm creating HMA. It's $150 per session. In the future, I'm going to have to jack that price up. If you want to work with somebody else who is trained in this field, it's going to cost a lot. what we're doing here is trying to make this so much more affordable and accessible to guys so that we can all pursue freedom together. Like, isn't that awesome? Let's do this. Even that's a great deal for all this. And we're going to add to it as time goes on. I want to see 100 guys. I want to see 1,000 guys in the White Bow Tie Club getting over a year of freedom from porn. But I want to make it even easier for you guys to sign up. So when you sign up today, you will also get a 60-day taste of freedom guarantee. So if you don't experience a taste of freedom, whatever that means to you, within 60 days, then we'll give you a full refund. No questions asked. So you can join now, go through a full 2 months, decide it's not for you, just email me, no questions asked, I'll give you a full refund. I truly believe you will get results, even if it's hard, even if it's not fun. After 60 days in this program, you should be able to get at least a taste of what it's like to really be free, not just fighting the battle the whole time. So here's the summary. Here's what it's all about. We are coming up on 2 hours here, and you guys are still with me. Thank you so much. I'm so honored. This is what you get: the 12-week video training course, live weekly coaching sessions, private community, 60-day freedom guarantee. What questions do you have? I am really, really excited about this. Shane says, I've spent much longer than 2 hours on porn, so this is nothing. Awesome. And just think about that, right? If you're thinking, oh, this is going to take too much time, think about all the time you've wasted on porn. If you think this is going to cost too much money, think about all the money you've wasted on porn, or that you could have been making if you were able to concentrate and focus without your brain getting hijacked. So can I explain the format of the live weekly coaching sessions? Yes, we have 2 types of weekly coaching sessions: group coaching sessions and individual. In a group, it'll just be like a live Zoom call, like a lot of people in there. I am strongly considering forming breakout groups so that you can have a smaller group within the live group coaching session. We're going to build this together. So we're going to figure out what's the best format. I already have a group format that's been working pretty well, where we start off with watching a clip from one of my weekly episodes and use that as a springboard for conversation. But the group coaching sessions are more flexible, they're more open, they're more casual. The individual coaching sessions are more intense. So the format is going to be more like a webinar, like this, right? You show up and you can participate in the chat. The only people on video and audio will be me and the person receiving the coaching session. So we will talk for an hour and then have some time afterward where other guys who have viewed the individual coaching session that just took place can type in chats to offer words of affirmation for the guy who just shared, right? If you are brave enough to be seen by a bunch of guys opening up about your darkest secrets, opening up about your pain, like, we don't want that to land with a plop. We want to come around you, support you, encourage you. So after each live individual coaching session, there will be an opportunity for guys to respond. And I think that'll be really sweet. But essentially, you would apply for one of these sessions by coming in with a story, right? You're coming in with a story about your childhood, or you're coming in with a story about sexual fantasy, and we'll work through it together. On Trigger Tuesdays, it will be more story-centered work. On Fantasy Fridays, it will be more experiential. So you'll be getting into more of your imagination, more of your emotions, more of your inner world after you've done a lot of the story work. So that's more of a high-level coaching session. And that's the one where guys just end up weeping. And I've been weeping myself, when you actually can connect with the boy within you. It's just so powerful. So we will have 2 individual coaching sessions. You need to unlock them by going through the video training, which is important, right? Because you need to be able to have a certain amount of understanding and have a certain amount of work that you've already accomplished by the time you're ready to receive one of these individual sessions, so we can maximize our time together. And I want to make sure that you get the most out of it. So it's a big experiment. It's going to be fun. Can one start at a later date? If you are in another program that is finishing in the next 4 weeks, you can start at a later date for $97 a month or $9.97 a year. If you want to become a founding member of Husband Material Academy for this deal, $19 a month or $197 yearly, you need to sign up before Monday, September 21st. Are you able to explain the difference between creating a porn-free world and sexual repression, something to avoid? Yes. There's a difference between freedom from and freedom for. So this is something Jay Stringer talks about in Unwanted. Freedom from porn is not a destination. In purity culture, it's like, okay, I just stayed away from everything bad and now I'm pure. Right? It's the absence of evil or sin or whatever. That's not what God created us for. When you begin creating your porn-free world, right, transforming your environment, your lifestyle, your relationships, you are pressing into what you're pursuing, what you were made for, what freedom from porn allows you to accomplish. And once you are gaining momentum in all those three areas, porn will pale in comparison. It just becomes puny. And the heights of honor and goodness and beauty that you'll reach will make porn look so small, make it look so unappealing in comparison, right, to real relationships, to health in your environment, in your lifestyle. It's awesome. So I guess sexual repression is all about getting rid of stuff. Redeemed sexuality is all about receiving and redeeming and restoring who we really are and what we were made to do. I forgot to give you a nice big button here, which I'm now showing, where you can join HMA at joinhma.com. You just click that button and you can sign up. Somebody is asking, what's the expected weekly time commitment? There's actually not a time commitment. I do ask for consistency, that you would move forward at a pace that feels comfortable for you. Certainly, the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. And if you take longer to do it, you'll still pay that monthly subscription. So I'm incentivizing you to take it seriously and go through it, right? When you go through it more quickly, you will unlock the live individual coaching sessions more quickly. You will achieve, you'll level up. And so I'm doing this because most online courses never get taken. People buy them. I've been guilty of this. People buy them and they don't actually do them. This is not your typical course where you just get a bunch of information and they expect you to implement it. This is the kind of thing where we are trying to give you as much support as possible, as much incentive as possible to take every step. You don't just watch the videos. You watch the video, you take an action step, you comment to show me that you're participating, and then as you do that over the different weeks, you unlock the next levels. You can come when you can and not come when you can't come, which is really convenient. And by the way, the Q&A Wednesday calls will be recorded and they will be shared with all HMA students. That will not be the case for live individual sessions just because they'll be so vulnerable. And because I really want to help people feel safe when they're opening up in front of a group of a lot of people. What percentage of men that I've helped come out clean from porn? I would say that when I was helping people for free, the percentage was low. Back in my days of leading college ministry, it was low and it was sad. When I started doing individual coaching and charging for it, well over 50% were getting free. The guys that weren't getting free, I'll tell you what they had in common. It was usually either mental illness. So he's dealing with something like depression, suicidal ideation, anxiety. These are not my focus. If you're struggling with these kinds of challenges, seek help from a mental health professional in your area. The other thing they had in common was that they were having a lot of trouble with their environment, their lifestyle, and their relationships. So one guy on the brink of divorce. We're focusing in this program on you as an individual, and certainly it can save your relationships. What I'm saying though is that if you want to heal as a couple, you need to heal as an individual. Your spouse needs to heal as an individual, and you need to heal as a couple. So there are 3 healings that need to take place, and I only help you do one of them. And yes, it can save your relationship if your spouse is also getting support, and if as a couple you're able to rebuild trust. And of course, your own individual healing will help with that. So the guys that didn't get free, usually it's because for a guy who's trapped living at home with his mom in a toxic environment, like he's only gonna get so far until he's able to fully separate from her and grow up into a sexually healthy adult. Sometimes it's those obstacles in your environment, in your lifestyle, in your relationships that are keeping you stuck. And so you can have a lot of inner healing, and it will only take you so far. Let me tell you the guys who really get free. For the guys who commit to this, what I ask for is an hour a day, 6 days per week, if you want to be free from day one. They get results. It's amazing. Some of them are free from day one. Josiah, Charlie, and Thomas are all examples of that. And Joshua too. And Eric too. Anyways, I don't keep stats on like the success rates, but that's in my individual coaching program. This is a new coaching program, so we don't have those stats yet. Will this recording be shared with this group to rewatch? Yes, you will get a replay of it tomorrow morning. 197 is only good for the first year? No, 197 is good for every year that you want to be a part of it. I certainly hope that you will graduate to the point that you move on from this program eventually. If it's helpful for you in maintaining the growth and the freedom that you've been able to achieve, awesome, stay in it. This is not like certain accountability software programs that celebrate you for being on there for multiple years. I saw a testimonial from one guy saying, I am going to stick with Covenant Eyes for the rest of my life. And he was really proud of that. And I was like, man, they really have a good business model, but is that freedom? I'll let you decide. The point is, I don't want you to be in this program forever unless it's taking you further, deeper and deeper towards pursuing and becoming a sexually healthy man of God. All right. Does it run for 40 weeks after the 12 videos are viewed? Online coaching calls will go forever, maybe. The 12 weeks of videos are unlocked for you on a weekly basis so that you don't binge watch them and you actually take the action steps each week. After you're done with all the videos, the coaching sessions will continue to happen every week. You'll also continue to have access to that private community. And I believe people will sometimes come for the content to learn, but you'll stay for the coaching to grow. So Husband Material Academy will be open every week of the year. And if I'm on vacation, you'll have a guest coach with some of my colleagues. So someone's saying, I'd like to share this offer with other friends. Any share link or fast way to share this offer? Yes. joinhma.com. Send them to that link. When we pay attention. Yes. Amen. So actually, after I've been charging for this, I notice guys actually do the work. Like they actually listen to what I say and put it into practice more. And so by asking you to pay for this, I believe it's actually part of helping you get motivated to do what it takes. When guys pay, they pay attention. And yeah, I think it's actually kind of a way of investing in yourself because you are valuable, because you are worth it. And I'm trying to make this price as low as possible for you to actually put your stake in the ground, do something about it, while also making the bar low enough to be within reach. And I'll be so honored by all of you who choose to join me on this new adventure. I think we're going to build something really beautiful together. Did I say all coaching sessions are Wednesdays and Fridays? No. Q&A Wednesdays will be at 3 p.m. Pacific time, and they will be recorded. Eastern time would be 6 p.m. Trigger Tuesdays will be the same time as this free live class tonight, and that is 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Friday calls are yet to be determined. We got some guys from Europe. We got some guys from Asia, Africa, and Australia, New Zealand. And so for the Friday time, I'm going to wait and see what the group says for what those coaching sessions will be in terms of a time slot. And week 8 of training, if you join right away, will be in November. So those Friday sessions will begin in November. Guys, what questions do you have? If you haven't signed up for HMA or you haven't decided and you're still here, what do you want to know? So if I sign up and don't start the videos for a few weeks, no problem, right? Right. No problem. Start the videos whenever you're ready. And whenever you complete week 2, you will unlock the Tuesday coaching sessions. And whenever you complete week 8, you will unlock the Friday coaching sessions. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Wow. This is the last time I'm doing this class, at least for 2020, and it's been an interesting adventure. I've enjoyed hanging out with you guys. Goodbye, guys. Hopefully see you in Husband Material Academy.